the American First Policy Institute, our guest here at 636 on News Radio WRVA. All right, so let's get through the hyperbole and the nonsense that everybody's been talking about around the country. So a lot of times you'll see lawmakers and people that aren't not necessarily here in Richmond talk about this, saying, well, they overturned the will of the people. We had an election. I want to play a little soundbite for you, Leigh Ann. I actually asked Seligman, who was the lawyer representing the General Assembly and ostensibly the Democrats, I asked him immediately after the oral arguments, is this about the election or the rule of law? Take a listen to what he said. Following up, is this more about the letter of the law and precedent, or is this more about the results of the election?
I think it's about the law. The Constitution is clear on every single one of the points that the General Assembly and the people validly ratified the amendment by strictly complying with the procedure set forth in the Constitution.
So, Leigh Ann, this soundbite hasn't gotten a lot of play. In fact, I had to go dig to find that because I remember, like, wait a minute, I asked him, is this about the will of the people in the election, or is this about precedent of the rule of law? He clearly said, this is all about the rule of law, not about overturning an election. Reaction.
I mean, it's sort of humorous. I mean, it is about the rule of law, but it's about what the Constitution in Virginia requires in order for the Constitution to be amended. The referendum could not have lawfully gone through without having followed the amendment process in Virginia's Constitution, and that did not happen here.
Plain as day, red letter law, election, and they ruled that the election starts when people start casting vote. Now, the Democrats are arguing, oh, no, it's when we count the votes on Election Day. And that's what the whole argument of this one was. But, Leigh Ann, there were two other cases that were going to come before the Supreme Court. This one didn't even get past the first argument. There were two more that were heading their way.
Right, exactly. And I think that what you see is, like I said before, the hyper politicization that's gone on in this country. And obviously, emotions are running very high. People are very concerned with what's happening. And I think that, like you said, we lose sight of, seeing the forest through the trees. The elections have to be fair. They have to be, in proportion with, they have to comport with their state's constitutions. And there can't be this instance where voters face the prospect of situations where votes are rigged, elections can be, they can be changed around midway through the process so that a different result is affected. The elections have to be easy for voters to engage in and feel confident in the results.
Okay, now let's get down to brass tacks. I talked about this with our former governor, George Allen, governor, senator, and we talked about that this is a state issue. The court of last resort is the Supreme Court of Virginia. Now we're hearing Democrats talking about, and they've asked for a stay so they can appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States. Does the Supreme Court of the United States have any jurisdiction here? What are your thoughts?
If it does, I don't know what it is. It's interesting because wherever you are, whichever side of the aisle, I think that there are a tendency to, seek ways in and out of state court. But the fundamental reality is that, the elections rest with the state. The election law rests with the states. And so here we have an outcome that perhaps some are, of course, very unpleased with and will find, arguments to make to try to get around it. But I think that this is very clear. The Virginia Supreme Court, as you said, has the final word on this. And it's obvious that they found correctly in ruling that the procedures were not properly followed here.
I am using the proper term. It's the court of last resort. It's the final arbiter. They make the final decision, period, end of story.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I do have to ask you about this crazy article that appeared in the New York Times. And I do mean crazy because, again, it feels like I'm in the Twilight Zone. Hakeem Jeffries and lawmakers here in Virginia had a conference call. And again, if it's leaked to the New York Times, it's a threat to the court, talking about firing all the justices and rehearing this case. And what they were saying is, well, let's lower the age so all of these guys are fired and then we can reappoint new ones and relitigate this case. That to me is about as despicable a thing I've ever heard, and the fact that's even being entertained, much less advanced. This is authoritarian. If I don't get my way in court, I'll just fire the court and find a court that'll find my way. That's not what the American jurisprudence system's all about.
No, that's exactly right. And I mean, I think that, you see kind of hysteria taking hold on all different levels. And obviously, the Virginia Constitution is very clear, right? It says what it says. The rules cannot be bent and changed to suit a particular political operative. And so I think that while you will see many attempts to make, interesting arguments, let's say, to find a way out of this particular answer, none of that's going to work.
Again, as a lawyer, your job is to advocate on behalf of your client, who you're representing, to the best of your ability. But the thing that bothers me the most is the hypocrisy I see that's confusing to the public. Originally, the Tazewell judge ruled. It was expedited to the Supreme Court. The same people that are calling this foul now said, oh, no, wait a minute. You can't rule on this until after the election because we have a precedent here in Virginia. Supreme Court said, you're right. We'll follow that precedent and we can take a look at it after the election. They said, no harm, no foul. If it loses, then we don't have to do anything. If it does, then there is an aggrieved party and we can start ruling on this. The same people that asked for that stay and said, please don't rule on this before, don't prevent the people from having an election, are now screaming, why didn't you do this beforehand? Explain that to me.
I wish I could, right? There continue to be very creative arguments unearthed, I think. And it's really just a shame because at the end of the day, what matters most in our constitutional republic is the confidence of the voters in a fair electoral process. And we're seeing that really challenged, I think, to the highest degree in real time here. And, it's my hope that the Virginia voters will see that the Supreme Court here will, stand fast with their decision, that it will be upheld, it will not be interfered with. And then the Virginia voters can go ahead and, engage with the midterm election this year in a way that they feel confident about, because that's what they deserve. That's what their Constitution demands.
One last thing. You've seen all the rhetoric flying back and forth and the people going on TV spinning and a lot of people that aren't lawyers trying to act like a lawyer. Is there something that you've seen or something that we've missed or something nobody's brought up that you think is relevant to this?
I mean, going as a lawyer, you dig into the case law, you read the case, word for word. And I think that it's just sort of amusing to see everybody spinning out in the way that they are. When in reality, just looking at the plain letter written in the case law is, of course, what's most interesting. Maybe it's not terribly exciting or sensational or, worthy of clickbait. But the court was very clear here. And I think that directing anyone back to the words of the court is really what has to happen and what should satisfy everybody here. Of course, knowing the way that, traditional media operates, that's probably not going to happen. But really, that is the final word here and what everyone should be paying the most attention to.
And again, if we're a country of rules and we have the rule of law, we have to abide by what the arbiters say, whether I like it or not. I pledge my allegiance to the Constitution and the fidelity of the courts. If the courts rule that way, whether I agree with it or not, it's still the law of the land. And anything less than that really is kind of dangerous.
That's exactly right. And that's what voters have to take comfort in, right? They have to see that the adults in the room here at the Virginia Supreme Court have, said their piece. They have made their ruling, and some obviously are very displeased with it. But those same people should also take comfort in the fact that going forward, that court will hold itself to the same standard if the shoe is on the other foot.
Leigh Ann O'Neill joining us right now for the American First Policy Institute. I appreciate you waking up early with us and casting a light on all of this, and love to have you back on the show again real soon.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks so much. Leigh Ann O'Neill from the American First Policy Institute. You want to react to what she said? 833-804-1140. It is 6:46 here on News Radio WRVA. This is Richmond's Morning News.
Hey, Jeff Katz for my friend Carl Carlson and his entire team at Carlson Financial. You know that Heidi and I had